Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening to celebrate the opening of Recall, Reframe, Respond, the art of Paul Scott. Just to give you a little bit of background about how this whole project came together. My first encounter with Paul's work was in 2019 when I saw an exhibition at the Rhode Island School of Design of his work. And I knew a little bit about the history of printed transferware, ceramics, but admittedly it really wasn't something that I had ever looked into very deeply. But Paul's work really awakened my interest in this genre of material and the fascinating role that it has played in our history and our culture. And I truly love how he brings together, he brings a contemporary relevancy to a historical medium and really encourages curiosity, critical thinking, and looking. So we are incredibly lucky this evening to have Paul here with us tonight, all the way from Cumbria in the UK, to talk about his work. He and his gallery representative, Leslie Farron, have been truly lovely to work with and wonderful collaborators in this project. So, with that little background, I would like to introduce Paul, the star of this evening. We were making some films for in the gallery, and we said, Paul, well, tell us who you are. And he said, well, I'm an artist, I'm an author, I'm a curator, and a gardener. And I said this last night, I would add to that an astute scholar, a loyal ally, and a master of irony and satire. Paul's artwork can be found in public collections across the globe, including the Victoria and Albert in London, the National Museum of Art, Architecture and Design in Norway, the Smithsonian, the LA County Museum of Art, the Philadelphia Museum of Art. I could go on and on and on. Paul holds a PhD from the Manchester Metropolitan University, and he has served as the professor of ceramics at the Oslo National Academy of Arts. And he has also authored numerous books and essays, including his limited edition artist book, which is making its debut in this exhibition. So please help me welcome Paul to the stage.
Is that going to be like that? Are we going? Oh. Okay, let's try that. Is that okay, mate? Oh, okay. Wonder what happens to that first one? Huh. That's what happens when you switch from an Apple an Apple presentation to a PowerPoint. They do things like that. So I hope there's no more of that. Well, thank you for coming along tonight, and welcome to my talk. And I'm going to subject you to far too many images in the next 45, 50 minutes, and far too much information. So prepare yourselves, and I hope you can keep up with me. First of all, I'm going to explain to you very quickly about transferware, because I sort of assume everybody knows what it is, but that's not necessarily the case. But this little sequence also explains processes that happen all the way through in my work as well as in transferware. So, you start off with paintings, all right? There's a painting, early Song dynasty, and then what you then get are prints of the paintings, in this case the woodcuts. And then what happens, taking a shortcut, is that people who work with ceramics then put those pictures onto ceramics. In this case, it's painted. And at the end of the 18th century in Britain, they developed a process of transferring images using print from copper plates onto earthenwares, pearlwares, which imitated the porcelain. And this is an early Spode piece. And then eventually, those early chinoiseries sort of distilled themselves into one pattern, which became immensely popular and was produced all over the world, including in Norway, of all places. You don't think of Scandinavia as being the home or the production of blue and white willowware, but they all were. In Denmark, Sweden and Norway all made the willow pattern. And because of this ubiquity, the genre is sort of familiar to people in lots of different countries. And I've found that I can tell stories that connect with people from different cultures and with different backgrounds. So specifically about the willow pattern, this is one from this series is in the show downstairs. This is a willow for Ai Weiwei. And in 2011, you may or may not know, but Ai Weiwei was detained while he was leaving a Chinese airport, and he was basically banged up for 6 months, subject to Chinese police interrogation, and eventually was released. But he wasn't just on his own. His friends Wen Chao, Louis Zhengzhang, and so we're also imprisoned with him. The little poster there, Who's Afraid of Ai Weiwei, appeared all over Hong Kong soon after he was interned, and so I employed that. And you'll find that scattered around the place, you'll find, first of all, you'll find that Ai Weiwei, or the silhouette of Ai Weiwei, can be seen on the willow pattern bridge, and he's dropping a Han Dynasty vase, and it reflects one of his installations, one of his artworks when he dropped a Han Dynasty vase, and it's in a video. But all the figures in the willow pattern have been erased and disappeared, and the willow pattern has been scattered with sunflower seeds, which was an exhibition that he was having at Tate Modern at the time. This is sort of like some years later, Britain, Spode, they developed more European type patterns, and the copying of Chinese porcelain sort of evolved into this sort of romantic European landscapes. And I first started messing around with transferwares, and this was one of my first plates, and it was made for an exhibition called Hot Off the Press, Ceramics and Print, because my co-curator wanted me to make a new piece of work. So I thought, I've always liked those willow pattern Italian transferwares, and I thought I would just do a Mickey take. It was meant to be like a one-off, but I really enjoyed making the piece. I enjoyed the graphic work, I enjoyed the drawing, the collaging, the research, the harvesting of images, and then putting it all together. And then what was amazing was that when the exhibition toured, people wanted to buy the piece. And there's nothing better when you're an artist and you're trying to make a living, that people want to buy your work. It's really helpful. And so, I mean, I've been stuck there ever since, haven't I, really? You know, I started exploring what you could do by ignoring the conventions of tableware and just putting prints and collaging right across the object. This is called the C-Scale Pigeon 2000, and it commemorates a nuclear accident at the nuclear plant at Sellafield when pigeons roosting in the plant were found to be radioactive. And they found out because the village a few miles away, Seascale, there were these sisters, I think there were, two ladies living in a house, and they used to feed the pigeons. And of course, when you feed pigeons, they get very healthy, and they have more pigeons, and then more pigeons, and more pigeons. And then the neighbours are getting pretty fed up with all this pigeon guano on their washing and on their cars, and they call the animal welfare to get rid of them. And what happens is that the story is that somebody jokingly said, "You want to watch those birds, you know, they're radioactive." And, well, you can't be too careful, can you? So the health and safety people decided they would get them checked out. And when they did, they found that they were classed as low-level radioactive waste. And so Dr. Helen Wallace from Greenpeace said, "How can British nuclear fuels claim their site is safe when they have nuclear waste flying over the perimeter fence?" Thought it was great. Anyway, and you can see that this is actually hanging in the British Nuclear Fuels collection. They bought it. And not from me, I hasten to add, but from the touring exhibition. I don't know if they realise what it is, but I think they think it's just a nice picture of Sellafield. Anyway, the nice thing about printing on ceramics, you can print on anything ceramic. You can print. So here we are. This is a nuclear toilet. This is Sellafield, the nuclear toilet of the world. Bring us your nuclear waste and we'll process it and flush it into the Irish Sea. I found that I could work with contentious images and people would look at them. This was the foot and mouth crisis in 2001 in England. And I put those images, I collaged those images in a screen print. And this is called Foot and Mouth number 5 after MacLeod, Darwell and May. They were the photographers who recorded the whole horror. And what I discovered was that people were profoundly upset by this. I had an exhibition at a local museum and the curator said they'd have to get the councillors to check it because they thought, I couldn't have the exhibition with this image in it. And I said, "What do you mean? Like, this is on the television every night. It's in the newspapers all the day. Why putting it on a plate, does it upset people?" Well, it did. And letters to the newspaper, phone-ins to the local radio station about how tasteless it was. And it made me realise that actually that transferware has a way to connect to people that's different, you know. People are familiar with it, but it hits home. You know, so I think this is out of sequence. It should be with the Huawei. But anyway, this is one of this series is in the exhibition, and this is Fukushima. You may remember the nuclear disaster after a tidal wave, and this is a collage, and I used a version of Hokusai's famous print, The Wave, and it's crashing into the plateau. And you can see the nuclear power stations in the background, and it's broken it, you know. And I now use kintsugi, the Japanese repair technique that highlights the break with gold, because I thought that was appropriate too. So this is the first of my Fukushima kintsugi pieces. Yeah. Anyway, I should talk about. I could, you know, just ramble on that for ages, but. I need to talk about the exhibition and the American links with it. In 1999, I was invited to do a lecture at Ohio State University, and I came across this platter in their collection, and it's the Hudson River, and I was absolutely bowled over by it. Obviously, I knew about transferwares, but I'd never seen stuff as dark blue and as moody and scenic as this. And so it triggered this sort of, you know, 26, 27-year project of research into American transferwares. And I'm going to jump now from Columbus, Ohio to Adelaide, and I'm just going to mention my gallerist and friend Leslie Ferrin, because that's when she and I met at a conference, and this is our friend Stephen Bowers. So I want to thank Leslie for all the work that she's done in helping me realise these projects and put things together and making today happen. We found that we had a common interest in transferwares, and I think I bought this place that place not long before I met her. The Hairpin Turn Picturesque Mohawk Trail, Massachusetts. You can roam where fancy leads you over hill and dale, but you ain't seen America till you've seen the Mohawk Trail. and here's a plate with a hairpin bend and car's eyes. I thought it was a real oddity. And then with Leslie, you know, I was able to visit the Philadelphia Art Museum transferware storage. So while Leslie and somebody else was enthusing about American studio pottery, I was rambling and putting out drawers with Staffordshire tablewares. And I had a residency, very fortunately, at the Clay Studio in Philadelphia, and I'm very grateful for them. And I spent a couple of months there and, you know, did a body of work as a result of it. This was a souvenir plate that I altered and put on a truck on driving past the Liberty Bell building. I started collecting it, you know. This is so American, isn't it? God bless our camper. But you notice it was made in Japan. And this is a good one. The Pennsylvania German Folklore Society of Ontario. The Pennsylvania German Folklore Society of Ontario. And I bought it in Wigton in Cumbria. It's made in Staffordshire. And it's got graveyards on it and covered bridges. And here's another one. Tombstone, Arizona, the town too tough to die. And it was produced for the Birdcage Theatre in Tombstone. And a few years ago, I was there. I went to visit the Birdcage Theatre. It's still there. I mean, it's just like a film set, that town. I went in the local museum, and what did I find? Staffordshire transferware in Tombstone, Arizona. So it gets everywhere. Anyway, what am I, an Englishman, doing here, talking to you about transferware and American scenery? Well, you know, I'm in a long line of visitors to America who've made observations about America. This was a very famous text by Alex de Tocqueville, a French person, about democracy in America. It's quite pertinent at the moment, isn't it? Here we are. Look at A Russian Paints America, The Travels of Pavel P. Svinin. And remarkably, this guy who travelled in America in 1811 to 1813 did lots of, it's like a travel book. The Staffordshire potters took those images and put them onto blue and white plates. And they've become assimilated into Americana. It's great, I think. Yeah. Claire Leighton, wood engraver. She was English, but she emigrated to the United States and became an American. And I love her work, and there are a number of her pieces. Well, there's one of her prints in the show that I selected, and you will see her pieces referenced in mine. This was a lovely little book that she produced for the Book Club of California in 1976. And this print in particular, I thought was rather beautiful. The American Genius, Change, Diversity, Stability. I thought it was rather poignant at the moment, the way things are. This is a guy called, this is a Chinese artist called Yang Li. And Yang Li travelled to England in the 1930s and then travelled around the countryside and did travel books. And they became immensely popular, travel books. And what's amazing about them is that when you look at them, he's painted the landscape as he sees it. And when you look at it, you think it's a Chinese landscape. But actually, when you look at it closely, it's not a Chinese landscape. It's like Ambleside or Windermere. It's just the way he saw it. And it's different to the way I see it. And I thought it was really lovely that he that these books existed and that they became so popular. And once he'd done Britain, he then travelled into the United States. So he did The Silent Traveller in New York and The Silent Traveller in Boston, and he did several other American cities and travelogues. He's well worth looking at. They're lovely. They're very nice. Anyway, books. So, this is called Pictures of Early New York on Dark Blue Staffordshire Pottery by a guy called R.T. Haynes-Halsey. And Haynes-Halsey became involved in the Metropolitan Museum, and he was responsible for the setting up of the American wing. Incidentally, you know, the Met has got a lot of transferware. It's in the open storage downstairs. Here is, now can I make this work? Oh yeah. Here is the original Haynes-Halsey book. Now the reason I'm talking about Halsey in this book should become apparent as we carry on, but Halsey was one of a number of people writing about Staffordshire transferwares with pictures of America on in the late 19th and early 20th century. And these transferwares were collected by powerful men. You know, Haynes-Halsey was a member of the governing board of the New York Stock Exchange, vice president of the Art Commission in New York, a Met trustee, and founder of the American wing. And he wrote a whole tome about transferwares. And you can see there, it's illustrated with these sumptuous photogravures. It's a bit bizarre because it has his own version of American colonial history, which bears sometimes very little relationship to the images. And it's a very conservative, right-wing narrative, I would say. So let's see, oh, there we are. Here's another one. This was by Edwin Atlee Barber, and this was for people like you and me. This was a small book that we could afford. He was the curator and secretary of the Pennsylvania Museum and School of Industrial Art. And they're precursors to the Philadelphia Art Museum and University of the Arts. So these are powerful people. And what happened was that their writings and all this collector literature elevated this industrial product, and it became collectors. It became collectible. And that's why so many American art museums have got collections of transferware. It became Americana. Made in Staffordshire, but Americana. Anyway, I'm going to take you on a little visit to some copper plates. This is the Spode Archive in Staffordshire. And it has a store which has 25,000 copper plates that go back to the late 18th century. And I've been privileged to work in it and research in it. I love the titles above the pens. Empress Eli, Ermine Empire, Ellesmere, Elgin. That's just a few. You know. I've been researching in the V&A Prints and Drawings Department. They've got 8,600 items relating to transferware. And when I went and looked at them a few years ago, I was the first person apparently to request to look at them since the 1930s. It's full of things like this, which are paintings for engravers to copy. This is called the Enoch Wood and Sons Sporting Series. These people are sailing up in a boat and shooting polar bears and their cubs. It's very sporting to me. And there's the plate that they made as a result of it. I've been in the Wedgwood archive. Wedgwood made lots of transferwares for the American market in the early 20th century. I love them. No, again, nobody had ever looked at this stuff before I asked about it. They just said nobody's interested in this. But it's so rich, and so it's like social documentary. Never mind the graphics. I love these roller skaters. And I like this. So this is the pattern books. They've all got pages and numbers and things. They don't know what this view is. This is a good one. And it's full of letters like this, and I'll read it. Yeah, if you've ever had any experience with committee management, you'll know what we're up against in getting these back stamps. There are 32 old ladies involved in this, and each one wants a different wording. Furthermore, more than half of them are out of town for the summer and cannot be reached. I will try again, but we do not have the wording in time. I'm afraid you'll have to run the samples without it. Sorry. It's full of stuff like this. Anyway, the Eidsvoll jug. Yeah, okay. So up till now, I've been working on plates. I like plates because they're flat, you know. I don't have to deal with 3 dimensions. But over a few years, I became fascinated by these jugs. This is a jug made in England, made in Sunderland actually, in the northeast, which was commissioned for the drawing up of the Norwegian Constitution in about 1830, I think, that the jug was made. I love it. And I did some research in the Sunderland museums, and they have these lovely, generous, rounded bodies and covered in pink lustre. And then I found other big jugs, like this one. This is in the V&A in London. It's called the 30-gallon jug. And what's amazing about it is that the whole surface is decorated with transfers, but it's all collaged together. Because they didn't make transfers just for this jug. They just pinched them off transfers that were meant for platters and things like that, and then collaged them together. So this is 1830. This is way before artists are using collage. And then a few years ago, when I was with Leslie at Yale University, I found another one of that series in the Yale University collection, amazingly. But you can see how big it is. Isn't that great? Fabulous. And this is a younger me looking at the Troy jug in Albany Institute of History and Art. So I commissioned a friend of mine, well, who's become a friend, a guy called Ed Bentley. And Ed and I collaborated to design a jug. Because, you know, I often work on ready-made, so I often work on things I bought on eBay or in antique shops. But you can't buy blank, large jugs in antique shops or on eBay, and I had to make my own. And it was a bit of a leap of imagination and a bit of a leap of faith, because it cost a lot of money for me to commission this, and I had no idea if I could even do it, you know, because I'm used to just putting things on flat things. Anyway, when I'm talking about collaging, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. This is a platter in my collection, and it's called the Temple pattern, and it's a large porcelain platter. But obviously, they didn't have a copper plate big enough to cover it, so they just collaged tissue prints from smaller plates together. And I think it's just fabulous. And as I said, this is 1815, way before artists were collaging. They were collaging in factories. I like this one. This belongs to Andrew Baseman, a friend of mine from New York. And it's a Dairyland sampler plate. And it's probably made for like a salesman to take around to, you know, companies and restaurants and things to show them your wares. But I love the randomness of it, the juxtaposition of things that have nothing to do with each other. And I think I love the aesthetic. Yeah. Look at that, there, Bedford, Ohio. Jay's Corner Counter, Bedford, Ohio. Who thought? Who knew? And these are the results. It's a bit like taking a big shortcut between that and that, but you know, these were on show in Albany Institute of History and Art a few years ago. Yeah. So these are my sampler jugs. And this one's in the show upstairs. And you'll see this in one of the American galleries. And it's a collage of my transfers and decals with material that I've harvested from the Spode archive, and they tell stories. And sometimes they're a bit random, but they usually tell stories. This one, which is based on Fleur de Sel's New York series, is now in the Yale University collection with that big jug. you'll see the whole set of 12 plates from Fleur de Sels, New York, in the exhibition space upstairs. Is it upstairs? Yeah, in the gallery. Anyway, a couple of years ago, I was contacted by the Shelburne Museum in Vermont, and they've got a mammoth jug room. They've got a room full of these jugs, and they wanted to commission me. They were interested in whether I'd be interested to make a jug for their room. And if you've never been to the Shelburne Museum, I can highly recommend it. It's the most bizarre, wondrous place. The founder was Electra Havemeyer Webb, and she described the museum as a collection of collections. 100,000 items that defy any simple description. You have paintings by Claude Monet and Andrew Wyeth alongside duck decoys, carousel animals, and a completely intact side-wheel steamboat. There's fine and decorative arts, folk art, circus collections, textiles, toys, carriages, and objects illustrating the history of design in America. It's just an amazing place. But I was interested in how this thing came to be. So Electra Havemeyer Webb spent her whole life collecting stuff, but where did it come from? The money that she had. And in the year of her father's death, the American sugar refining company controlled 98% of US sugar. So the money came from sugar. And of course, sugar, the production of sugar is not without its problems. This is one of the jugs from the Shelburne collection. Britannia protecting the Africans. I think that's a bit ironic, really, but we were one of the instigators of the slave trade. I found this little plate in the collection. Sugar, how it grows and how it's made. This is draining the sugar. And it came from a book. Sugar, how it grows and how it's made. A pleasing account for young people. Some nice pictures. And there's the original, and there's the ceramics. It's a perfect illustration of how things change from media to media. Of course, and an earlier bit of research I did, I found this platter. And when I saw it for the first time, I just thought, oh my God, this is just amazing. It's so beautiful, isn't it? And then I looked at the title, and it said Cape Coast Castle on the Gold Coast, Africa. And then it dawned on me what this depicted. This is a slaving ship, and these people in the boat being rowed out are enslaved Africans being taken to the Americas. And then I did some research, and with a friend of mine, Dr. Joe Dunn, we identified the original painting. So, it's a painting by George Webster. It was commissioned by His Royal Highness, the Duke of Clarence, part of a propaganda campaign for the continuation of the slave trade. And then it made a print, you see. And you'll notice, I don't know if you can see actually, but the flags on the prints and that are Union Jacks, or British. But actually on the platter, they have American flags. And they were those platters were only exported to the United States. Anyway, this platter, the image of it is featured on a number of pieces that I've made. And I haven't got time to go into it, but this is about Providence financing the slave trade, even though they pretended they didn't have anything to do with it. And I was exhibiting at RISD Museum, and this painting was on show, Race Rise, and it's after Charles Moore, the photographer, and it's a painting by Andy Warhol. And Charles Moore's photographs of the Birmingham riots in the 1960s was instrumental in the civil rights movement, in the passing of the civil rights bills. And I just thought that the two were connected, and so I made a piece that's called After Wood and Warhol. So the platter itself is made by a friend from Massachusetts, Mara Superior. I commissioned her to make the porcelain platter, and then I, put the image on it. So the platter's based on the Enoch wood. Sadly, those police, the riots and the disturbances, are still happening, and I see that there is your president is trying to send troops to Portland again. Yeah, this is a souvenir of Portland, right? This is a Roland Marcellus plate, and you'll notice if you look on the right-hand side in the cartouche above the riot police, there's a statue, and the statue is called The Coming of the White Man, and it's in one of Portland's parks, and it's Native Americans welcoming the white man to Oregon, which has a certain irony about it, because it's obviously not the case. It wasn't the case. Anyway, this is what faced these people when they got in those ships. The way they were packed together, separating women and children, and this is an Edwin Muybridge from his motion series of buffalo. And these are dead buffaloes. And what I discovered was that in order to make brown sugar white, that the Havemeyer company developed a system to filter it. And the filtration system involved bone char, which are burnt bones. And for a period at the end of the 19th century, there was a big business in collecting all the bones of the massacred bison, buffalo, from the plains. They were shipped to New York, and they were used to purify brown sugar to turn it white. So, so they appear on my jug. And this is the jug before it's fired, or the detail. And then when it's fired, you can see that the foundation of the jug, which is a celebration of Shelburne, to be honest. It's a celebration of a wonderful place, and it is a wondrous place. But the reminder is there that this wealth and this wonder has a dark history. Yeah. Anyway, last year, in June, after after we'd agreed that I would have an exhibition here, I spent a couple of days in the museum archives. Well, in the museum galleries and in the archives here. And I had a wonderful time, as you can imagine. It's such a privilege when you're an artist and you get to go behind the scenes and you get to go in the museum stores. I love it. But of course, the thing that I knew Cincinnati Art Museum for, and I've known it for many, many years, is this painting. Grant Wood's Daughters of Revolution. I wrote about this painting, and particularly the willow pattern cup that these ladies are holding. I wrote about it in my PhD thesis. And I wrote about it because the willow pattern here is a signifier that they're descendants of the original settlers who moved out west. It's amazing how these industrially made chinoiserie can have that kind of meaning or carry that kind of weight to it. And I love the irony and the satire, and so it was an absolute privilege to see the painting for real last year, because up till then I've only ever seen it as a reproduction. And Washington crossing the Delaware. And the cup. Yeah. A much valued heirloom in the Midwest was the willow. So, now I've come to the things that I'm making for this show. I mean, I could give you a lecture just about this jug, but obviously that's not on the cards. This is the base. You can't see this in the exhibition, but this is what the bottom of the jug looks like. And the jug is called Woodcuts, and it's after Grant Wood. But it's also after Enoch Wood. Enoch Wood was one of those manufacturers of American transferways. And in a way, it's also after Claire Leighton, because she used woodcuts, you know. So the piece is called American Scenery, New American Scenery, Sampler Jug number 11, Woodcuts, after Grant and Enoch, Heritage and the Sleep of Reason. And here we find Grant Wood's Daughters of Revolution, but I've slightly altered it. Let me just see. Yeah, so I don't know. So underneath the painting, the figure with the hat is Edward, was it G. Robinson? He used to own this painting. Yeah, well, I think it was originally sold to a Greek shipping magnate, and then Edward G. Robinson acquired it. I think so. Or was it the other way around? Okay. Yeah, Edward G. Robinson had it. That's right. And then his divorce settlement, he had to sell it, and it went to a Greek shipping magnate, and then it came to Cincinnati. So that's why he's there anyway. I couldn't resist putting Edward in. You can see behind the ladies that instead of Washington crossing the Delaware, there's El Salvadorian father and his toddler who drowned crossing the Rio Grande. Changing a slide presentation from an Apple keynote to a PowerPoint, they still don't get it right because all the text has got chopped off. Never mind. Yeah, so behind the daughters, the painting is altered. And there's the Border Patrol above. Yeah. Keep going, Paul. And on the other side is another Grant Wood painting that you don't have, but is in the Amon Carter. Is it Amon Carter? Carter Museum in Fort Worth in Texas. And this is Parson Weems' fable of George Washington and chopping down a cherry tree or something. There it is. But I've changed he's drawing the curtain, but it's on somebody else who's chopping trees down, or enabling the chopping of trees down. And the opening up of United States protected forests to loggers, which is just happening. But yeah, you can see in the background, these are collages of Grant's paintings. Yeah, this is a page from my book. And you can see that, that explains it. Oh, look, see that? Anyway, this is a print that you have in your collection. I've always felt it to be a very powerful thing. The sleep of reason produces monsters. So, the sleep of reason appears on a number of pieces. And the tree stump with the chainsaw on is after Claire Leighton. This is Claire's original woodcut that I've altered. This is one of your paintings by Elijah Pierce called Slavery Time. And I harvested the heads and I put them on the banding at the bottom of the jug, along with the Cape Coast Castle platter, because that's what some of my stuff references in the exhibition. You'll see that there's lots more on that jug. So the jugs and the lidded jars and things like that are well worth a closer look. Some of the details are very fine. Little. You've got to look closely. You'll see to the right of the Cape Coast Castle, there are flames, and that's actually lifted from my plate, which is a souvenir of California. And this is a plate made by Roland Marcellus, probably, at the early 20th century, and it's called Beauty Spots of California. But of course, when I bought this plate, the beauty spots of California were going up in flames. So I thought it was an appropriate alteration to make the plate more up to date. And this is called the Sleep of Reason woodcuts. And this is a pattern made by Spode called Woodland, Spode's Woodland. And yeah, this is about the, well, you know what it's about. It's about the freeing up of public land and protected forests for logging. Yeah. And these two go together very well in your American galleries in front of that painting. So you can see those upstairs. And on the jug spout, you can see the American eagle. This is based upon this plate. This is called the Cincinnati porcelain. It's Washington's Cincinnati porcelain set. It was hand-painted in Jingdezhen in China, and it became presidential porcelain. And it's been a common, it spawned lots of reproductions, and there's probably somebody somewhere still making this plate with this lady bearing her left boob for some reason, carrying an American eagle. So one of the patterns that was inspired by it was by Spode. It was called Spode's Heritage pattern. So the border on here is actually directly from the Spode archive, and is the pattern that would have been used on those commercially produced plates. The eagle in the middle is actually also adapted from Spode's heritage pattern, except that you'll find that the head of the eagle is turning to the right, our right, the viewer's right, and is not just clutching a handful of arrows, but instead of the olive branches, there are bombs, and you can see the thing's on fire. So, and it's called heritage, except I've reversed the heritage. I think that the pattern there, the Goya thing says, the sleep of reason produces the news. It's an adaptation of produces monsters. This is... I met Terence last year, and we got on very well, and we agreed to do some collaborations. And we've been collaborating from a distance. Yeah, that means we've been sending things through email and Dropbox, and then neither of us following up for months, and then one of us doing something, and then the other one saying, oh, by the way, I've done this. And so it's been a very, very, very loose collaboration. Let's say we've had conversations, and then Terence has made something and I've made something. That's about right, isn't it? It's a very easy, a very laid-back collaboration. Anyway, my production was based on this vase that I saw in the stores. Neither Amy or Mackenzie were particularly keen on this idea that I would do something based on this. But I did, anyway. And this is the result, and you'll see this in the gallery. It's called New American Scenery and Souvenirs, Missing and Third Persons. And what I realized, you know, over the years, when I first started collecting transferware, I just sort of thought it was sort of innocent. It was just like, you know, nice landscapes and patterns and things. And the longer and longer I've researched it, the more I've realized that it portrays a particular view of the world. You know, the only people ever depicted on transferware, certainly the original ones in the early 19th century, were rich white people and, you know, politicians or industrialists. And so I thought I should rebalance that. And I put people in from diverse backgrounds and from different ways of life, and I put women in as well. And this is like the most recent iteration of that sort of movement within my work. And a lot of them depend on the photo studio of W.G. Ball? W.G. Ball, yeah. A black American photographer who was immensely famous in his lifetime and photographed very famous and rich people. And then, you know, some of them are named people on this vase, some of them are unnamed. They're just photographs of people, we don't know who they were. And it's also juxtaposed with, with stuff from my American scenery project. So it's like random. There's a theme to it, but there's a randomness to it. And all the figures on the top, by the way, are those figures that appeared on the back of the Wedgwood things. They were incidental figures. They were just like, who are they? Those people in the background. I thought it was quite nice to bring them out and put them out. And some of the patterning on the jar is also from the Spode archive that was made by apprentices, that was never meant to see the light of day. So it's a mixture of, these people were never on transferware, so I put them on, you know. And Terence, I shared my Roland Marcellus pictures and artworks and the Selma plate that I did, and Terence has used those with his piece. And he works, although Terence's work and my work look the same, look similar, we work very differently technically. So, it was very interesting for us both to connect. Yeah, these are the Wedgwood people, you see. Yeah, there's women on here, and there's New York streets. There's Leonard Peltier. And there's a listing of all the native, the indigenous tribes from Ohio, because they've been missing and acknowledged. And when we come to American Indians, you know, one of the things that bugged me very much was I realised that the stuff that I'd been taught, and we've been taught as we were growing up, was actually very often a fictionalised version of history. This painting by Benjamin West, you know, was painted nearly 100 years after William Penn allegedly had a treaty with the Lenape Indians, and this painting was reproduced as an engraving, and then people copied the engraving as paintings. It's like this. You can always tell the copies because they're back to front. Yeah, can you see? There's the engraving. There's the original painting. See? It's back to front. Yeah. And of course, they appeared on transfer. But a few years ago, I contacted an American photographer called Ryan Visions because he'd been documenting the Standing Rock protests in North Dakota, isn't it? And this is a fact. This is an image of something that really happened. And this is Mega May Plenty on horseback confronting a massed ranks of police and riot police and militia. And it's a very strong, powerful image, I think. And so I've overlaid the Broken Treaties series. I've overlaid these plates with Ryan's image, with his permission, of course. And a few years ago, I also discovered the scandal of the uranium mining in the Navajo Nation. And where in the 1950s and 60s, a whole generation of Navajo men lost their lives because they were employed in uranium mines during the Cold War without protection and for very poor pay. Timothy survived because he was a bit of a troublemaker and wanted a pay rise, and then the second time he wanted safety equipment, so he got sacked both times. But as he said, he was still alive because of that. And he showed me around. There's a bit of uranium ore and a drilled hole. And here's the plate I did, or one of them, and this is in the show. Anyway, look, I've run out of time, haven't I? too long, talking for too much. This is in the show, more souvenir plates that I've cut up. This is a more recent piece. You'll see that there's a borderline here. In one of the galleries, you'll find, in a number of the galleries, you'll find my pieces are inserted amongst the collection. These are about borders. Leslie and I travelled and went over the Mexican border a few years ago. And as we went across the border over this dam on the river, these Mexican people were dancing and celebrating, and I think it's a friendship sculpture or something that passed on the way. Things are a bit different now, and this is called Across the Borderline. The thing is, when you look at this plate, people assume that those figures are migrants, but they're actually figures that I harvested from a Wedgwood plate depicting spectators at a hockey match. So they're actually Americans. And this alludes to the fact that they're by the grace of God, or they're by accident of birth. Go we. And this references that tragic incident when a group of migrants being smuggled across the border were found suffocated in the back of a truck in San Antonio. So, I'm going to finish. Are we all right? Another 2 minutes? You've either gone to sleep or nobody minds. So, Haynes House's book, right? This particularly odd narrative, but very, very beautiful. I've got several copies of it now. I love it. I made my own version to update it for the 21st century. So it's got pictures of New York in it, giclée prints, and then photogravures that I commissioned from my friend John Goodman. Here's the book. You can see how big it is. And it's taken 10 years to realise. And it's expanded from being just about America and American scenery to being an overview of my practice. And it includes material from my archives, original material. It includes process materials, prints from tests and things like that. And it includes screen prints and artworks on paper rather than ceramic. And you can flick through a digital version of it in the gallery if you want to. And I have to say thank you to Cincinnati Art Museum for inviting me to exhibit here, and particularly to Amy and Mackenzie for the process that we've been through, which has been very enjoyable, communicating on a regular basis and swapping stuff by email and things like that. And all the staff here who've made the displays so wonderful, so beautifully lit. I mean, there's a copper plate in that upstairs gallery, which is so beautifully lit for the copper plate for the Indian Point cut plate. Very, very beautiful. So I'm very grateful. And I'm also very grateful for the agreement for the exhibition, because I said as part of it that I would finish the book. So if I hadn't agreed that, and I hadn't put it in writing that I would finish the book, it would still be in process 10 years plus on. So I'm very, very grateful that you made me finish it. Yeah. The book has been I have a love-hate relationship with it, but I think I'll begin to love it now it's finished. The book end pages are all from my back stamps, from my plates, but they also reference people who I've collaborated with or who've inspired me, or some of the places that I've been, or the collections that I've researched in. And they're very much in the flavour of those sampler plates. Is that it? Oh, it is. Well, it should say thank you to... Oh, no. Yeah, actually, I thought it hadn't finished, because actually, I remember putting this in it, because today, apparently, there's been a peace deal, but you hold your breath, don't you? In the early 19th century, they made plates about the Middle East. Aleppo, Damascus, Palestine, Egypt, Istanbul. I just updated this one. This plate is called Palestine. I just updated it for the 21st century. And here's the thank you. So my project was supported by the Alturas Foundation Artists in Residence Programme and Ferrin Contemporary, RISD Museum and Arts Council England, and enabled by lots of other people too. And special thanks to the museum and Leslie for making it all happen. And thank you for coming and being a wonderful audience.
We have time for a couple of questions. If anybody has one, you can raise your hand and I'll come around with a microphone.
Hi, my name is Caitlin. I'm a student of Terrence Hammond's, actually, and I'm working on, learning about transfer printing onto ceramics right now. And you mentioned that you normally work on ready-mades.
Yeah.
So, like, at what stage are they already like completely fired glazed pieces?
Oh yeah. I mean, you'll see lots of plates in that show. I bought them on eBay, or I bought them antique shops or antique fairs. So, and some of them are 200 years old. The thing is that a fired ceramic object, you can just refire them. You can refire ceramics loads of times. And if I want to alter a plate, then if I want to alter the surface of a plate, I have a dental drill, and I have diamond bits, and I put water on the plate, and then it's not very pleasant. You need your iPods in on your headphones on. And I just draw. It's like drawing. I erase things, and then I have to reglaze them and refire them, and then I put my prints on top. And then when you put a print on a ready glazed object, you need to make a decal or a transfer. And when you put it on, you just have to fire the plate or the object to the temperature where the glaze starts to melt, and then my prints sink into them. Very often, if you buy decals or transfers, they're like overglazed enamel, but I use underglaze or inglaze. So mine are nearly always blue, or I have a digital printer now, and I use digital prints. But they're all inglaze, not on the top. Yeah. Does that answer your technical question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm Kate Bonansinga from University of Cincinnati. Thank you so much for your presentation. And I have another process question. You suggested that you and Terrence have very different processes, and I'm wondering what the difference is.
Well, Terrence works on clay. Terrence makes things. I don't make anything.
Well, I don't know if I make things so much, but so as you mentioned, yours are inglaze, and mine are printed onto greenware. So I do underglaze transfers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, he prints directly on the clay, or
Yes,
transfers directly on the clay.
So it's either directly on the clay, or it's a print onto rice paper that's then transferred onto greenware.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Anna. I'm a library science student, so this was very interesting. But I was going to ask about what is your research process that you go through when you make the art?
What's my research process? Well, it varies on what I'm researching, really. I mean, one of the things about researching in archives is that very often the archivists or the library or the museum will say, well, what do you want to see? But until you start digging, you don't always know. So there's a particular issue. You know that, say, somewhere's got a collection of prints, but you don't know exactly what they are, or you go through the computer thing and you. So one of the things is that balancing. You've got to give enough information so they'll let you in, and they'll give you stuff. But you ought to keep an open enough mind to find stuff. But it's all different, because if you go, there are things like official archives, like libraries and museums, publicly run libraries and museums. And then there are what I call unofficial archives, which are like factory archives, which are often run by volunteers and not properly sorted, or sorted by, like the Spode archive was sorted by the engravers, And then there's the kind of research that I need to do, for example, when I'm working with a museum and looking at the collection. So you've got to do the initial research and look at the material, and then I read up about it. I read up about, I knew lots about Grant Wood before I started this process, but I read more or less everything I can find about Grant Wood since I started the Jerk. So it's a mixture of lots of different things, really. But one of the things about it is being persistent. It's being persistent to burrow into things, but allowing yourself to be distracted at times, to go in different directions. I think one of the problems with the age of the internet is that you can start researching something and very quickly get distracted, and you end up all over the place. And in a way, that's very nice, and it's very lovely. But actually, sometimes you need to stay focused, and you need to keep digging and digging and digging and digging and digging. And the internet is not always the best thing for that. And actually being in physical archives is a good deal more pleasurable than Googling stuff or looking for digital art. It's much, much nicer to go and handle materials and turn pages in books and, pick things out or take things off shelves. It's much, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Okay, I think we're out of time here.
Okay.
But I'd like to say one more thank you to Paul for speaking with us tonight, and a thank you to all of you for being here.
Well, I hope you enjoy the exhibition anyway, yeah. Because there's loads more stuff I could have carried on talking all night.